Okay, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to complete this chart with you, and this is what you're going to see on the test, something similar. Like if we do number one, which we've done before, you notice that the denominator, you can factor an x. So is it in factored form? No, you have to write it out. So the numerator is 2x, and the denominator, you can factor an x, so you have x minus 2. You notice automatically that you have an x and then you have an x here. You see how you have a common factor, so that means there's a whole. If you look at your graph, it appears that it never crosses the y-axis. Actually, y equals 0 is never crossed. So is there a y-intercept? So I would say no. Oh. I would say yes. The y-intercept is right here. So let me go to my table, menu, table. We go up. It's 0, and it does not have a y-intercept, because that is where the hole is at, and it doesn't have an x-intercept, so I was correct. Is there a break? If you look at the graph, you see the graph, it goes from here, and then it jumps over here, so there is a break. This is where a lot of students have a hard time, these last two. Domain is actually what are the x values that we can use in the equation. Obviously, the only numbers that we can use is 0. You can use 0 because you can't have a 0 denominator. And you also cannot use 2, because if you type in 2 minus 2, you get 0, and you get a 0 in the denominator. So that's the domain. The range is all numbers except for 0. Now, if you notice, your vertical asymptote is where it's undefined here. So we have x equals 0, and our horizontal asymptote is y equals 0. We're going to go ahead and answer number 2. And we want to know if this is in factored form. If you see 2, that's in factored form. But if you see the denominator, there's a common factor of x. So it's 2. And what I'm doing there is I'm factoring. So I'm going to go automatically to my whole. I don't have a common factor, so I'm going to say no. And there is a break because I did show it here, so it's yes. The y-intercept, it appears that there's no y-intercept because you see the graph here. If I trace the graph, you notice it doesn't cross the x-axis. It doesn't cross the x-axis. So I want to say no, it doesn't have a y-intercept. You can also try to evaluate. We want to know when y is equal to 0 and it doesn't appear. Now, if I go to x equals 0, you notice that at 0, it's undefined, so it doesn't have a y-intercept because it would have been at 0. Okay, x-intercept, on the other hand, we need to see if y equals 0 somewhere. So instead of scrolling all the way up, so it looks like it doesn't cross the x-axis also, so it's going to be no for x-intercept. Now, if you want to be exact, you can also go to, you can press tab. Okay, well, we're going to go on to the next part. So domain. So what's going to make this undefined? Well, we know it's going to be x cannot equal 0, x can equal 3, and we also know that y will never equal 0. We did have two vertical asymptotes. We had x equals 0, x equal 3, and y equals 0. So the x equals 0, x equal 3 is your vertical asymptote, y equals 0 is your horizontal asymptote. I removed the table for this last graph. I'm going to type in y equals 0, and I want to see if it ever intersects. So there's no intersection, so that's why there would be no intercept, no x-intercept. For number 3, you notice that there's nothing that we can factor. It is in factored form, so it'll be 5 over x minus 2. Y-intercept, there is a y-intercept right here. So I'm going to go to the table, and I'm going to go to 0. So you have 0, negative 2.5. Now, if you look at the graph, you notice that this graph will never ever cross the x-axis, so there won't be an x-intercept. And you notice that there isn't a common factor in the numerator or denominator. So it says, is there a hole? I'm going to say no. But there is a break here. So the domain is what's going to make this denominator undefined. And the only number that makes this denominator undefined is 2. So for the domain, x does not equal 2. And for the range, we notice that y will not equal 0. So this is your domain, this is your range, this is your domain, this is your domain, this is your range, And you notice we do have our vertical asymptote at x equal 2. And we also know our horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. Okay, number 4, you notice we have negative 4x plus 12, and we have x squared minus 9. They have a common factor. You have negative 4, so it's going to be x minus 3. X squared minus 9 is going to be x plus 3, x minus 3. And that's your common, that's your factors, x squared minus 9 is equal to x plus 3 and x minus 3. You notice they have a common factor of x minus 3, so there is a hole. And you want to know where your hole is at? Because x equal 3 is not going to be part of your domain. X will not be part of your domain. X equal 3 will not be part of your domain. Y-intercept, it appears there is a y-intercept, so go to your table. And it is, y-intercept is 0, negative 2.5. X-intercept, that would be none. There is a break. And the domain are all numbers except for 3. All numbers except for negative 3, that's your domain. Your range, all numbers except for 0. Your vertical asymptote is x equals 3. No, negative 3. And we're going to have to change this here because it was not the correct graph. So it's, I would leave it as negative 4x plus 12, and then your denominator x squared minus 9. Don't type it in factored form because it doesn't give you the graph correctly. Okay, so it doesn't look like it crosses the y-axis, maybe over here, the x-axis, and we have our I'm missing. I was missing the parentheses. Okay, I want to make sure that it's correct. Oh, it's still wrong again. There it is. So our vertical asymptote is at x equal -3. Or horizontal asymptote is y equals 0. Our y-intercept, I'm going to have to go to the table and then go to 0, and it's -1.33. We have x squared minus 16 divided by -3x minus 9. It's not in factor form. The factors are x minus 4, x plus 4, -3, we have x plus 3. So now, does it have an x-intercept? Yes, it has an x-intercept. And you can look at the table. 4 and -4. So it occurs at 4, 0, and -4, 0. So now we got to find the x-intercept. We already found the x-intercept. We got to find the y-intercept. The y-intercept is 0, 1.77. Is there a whole? I'm going to say no because there's no common factor with the numerator and the denominator. So there's none. Is there a break? Yes. So what's going to make the denominator unknown? Undefined? It's going to be x, all numbers except for -3 and y. All numbers. The domain is, again, x will not be -3. We know that the vertical asymptote is going to occur at x equals -3, and there is no horizontal asymptote.